Welcome to In Frame Out's Year in Film, where we take stock of 12 months of spectacular cinema and unfortunate rubbish. When whittling down the over 120 releases from 2024 into our upcoming end-of-the-year lists, there was still a metric ton of terrific and terrible features to discuss. So, before we get to the best and worst movies of 2024 in the coming weeks, let's celebrate and commiserate the honourable and dishonourable mentions that narrowly missed their respective top 10s. Honourable mentions.
We'll use this one to measure the progress, and we'll feed any inconsistencies back into the machine.
Taking every Beauty and the Beast cinematic trope and kicking the ever-loving tar out of their self-aggrandizing artifice, A Different Man feels like a preemptive strike against what a more Hollywood version of this story would undoubtedly have entailed. Whenever things start to veer towards "we're all beautiful on the inside" saccharine or condescending platitudes passed down by gorgeous actors, A Different Man stops in its tracks, then wryly inverts itself in real time, as if to say, regardless of history, appearances, cultural context, or the complexities of their unique perspective, everyone on Earth can be rad as hell or a total sack of garbage.
Look, God, all unhappiness in life comes from not accepting what is. You know who told me that?
Your shrink.
No, I'm serious. You know who told me that all unhappiness in life comes from
not accepting what is?
Lady Gaga.
It's the Spike Jonesification of self-acceptance and identity, how we build character through adversity, and the precarious tightrope art walks when depicting marginalized groups. A Different Man admittedly wobbles with a messy epilogue, but it's an otherwise assured and deftly balanced gem. An invigorating exercise in cinematic edging, Challengers is a saturated love triangle set amongst the back and forth chicanery of pro tennis. Power dynamics, lusting looks, and ego-driven one-upmanship sweat it out over this display of delayed gratification and tantric foreplay. And it manages to be one of the sexiest features of the year despite featuring not 1 second of nudity or mattress mamboing. All of which is thanks to the lip-biting chemistry between the cast, Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor's throbbing score, and the way that Luca Guadagnino shoots the whole thing with a tanning lotion sheen that looks less like Wimbledon and more like the music video for Benny Benassi's Satisfaction. Call it Challengers or Y Tu Zendaya Tambien, but remember that this is not even the best thing Guadagnino released this year.
Qul Muad'Dib Usul.
Having established Arrakis, the Fremen, and 2+ hours of loquacious lore in the first installment, Dune Part 2 commits to a running start and seldom lets up in its sprawling sand as far as the eye can see saga of religious hypocrisy, political betrayals, and guerrilla warfare. Confidently committing to the cult of personality murkiness of the source material and rendering it with made-for IMAX cinematography and scale, seeing this on the biggest screen available was a sight for sore eyes and a reminder that blockbuster entertainment doesn't need to talk down or dilute itself to craft a spectacle that's genuinely worthy of awe. Dune Part 2 was an invigorating worm ride of spicy messiahs, Shai Hulud's, and every frame a painting compositional brilliance. By leaning into the dehydrated, exhaust-sucking lore of a desert at the end of human decency, Furiosa is almost as utterly enthralling as Mad Max Fury Road, and it does this by steadily accelerating and knowing precisely when to shift gears, rather than trying to gun it from start to finish. This results in a very different film, a wasteland fairy tale with tyrannical dictators masquerading as charismatic leaders, and perilous journeys echoing the callousing trials a protagonist must endure to become the heroine they're destined to be. It's not perfect, and uses far too much CG nonsense when George Miller is the king of practical effects, but even those inconsistencies subtly play into the idea that this is some exaggerated yarn that's been sloppily fixed with embellishments and incongruent elaborations over time. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, is a pedal-to-the-metal thrill ride. Chris Hemsworth deserves a Best Supporting Actor nomination for his work here, and the film's status as a box office bomb is criminal. Only the River Flows is a procedural murder mystery on paper, but as the standard beats are drummed out and moved over, something isn't right. Everything's too obvious, too cut and dry, but always just a little out of step. Scenes go from rudimentary in their simplicity to abstract and impenetrable. And as our lead detective slides from astute professionalism to outright schizophrenia, the quiet cleverness of what's going on here starts to show itself. By the time events run their course, whether we've just watched the law prevail or a horrifying miscarriage of justice will depend entirely on what moments you as an observer think are real and which you believe to be skewed fabrications of an unwell mind. Only the River Flows actively provokes your imagination and encourages a conversation about the subjectivity of guilt and innocence. The Outrun conveys substance use disorder with a tenacity and warts-and-all realism that directly contrasts with its closed-off archipelago setting. At the bottom of a bottle and taking shelter amongst the blustering scenery of the Orkney Isles, this is about the prison of addiction and the short-term solution of self-imposed isolation.
Come on. Come on, love.
What are you going to do? Are you going to make me...
I'm going to take you outside. No, no.
Let me live!
Year after year, Saoirse Ronan racks up a filmography of such versatility and quality that her status as one of the greatest actors of her generation is all but assured at this point, and here her display of naked vulnerability and gnashing tenacity ranks up as one of the most impeccable performances of her storied career. A realistic, empathetic, and unvarnished portrayal of alcoholism, The Outrun wears its honesty like an open wound.
Right now, can I say something like vulnerable? Like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is one of my favorite movies.
Oh, it's so good.
Like,
all that chocolate.
Comedian I Think You Should Believe alumni and Joe Pera collaborator Connor O'Malley has blessed us all with Rap World, indie filmmaking at its most gonzo, uninhibited, and hilarious. A mockumentary home movie about three procrastination-prone morons in 2009 who set out to make a rap masterpiece, Rap World is the funniest and most cringingly real comedy of the last 12 months.
The girls that go there smell like Halloween masks, is what I heard. Yeah, I heard that.
What are you talking about?
that girl, Ashley's got 6 months out of the year, every year she's got a broken leg.
The dizzying non-sequiturs, in-camera editing, bizarre title cards, and raps so bad they circle all the way background to genius.
I'm bringing like a really intense lyricism.
I'm a superhero and I only kill teachers.
This feels like a nicotine-stained relic of every burnout dingus I knew in the late 2000s. DIY released because of the sheer volume of uncleared music and footage used in its comedic collage, you can find Rap World in its 55-minute glory on YouTube, and you'll find it linked down below.
You could offer me eternal life or a catfish sandwich, and the answer would still be the same. Especially since you stopped calling me sir, which is about the only thing you had going for you.
Police brutality and institutional bigotry aren't always enacted with billy clubs and knees on necks. Often it's carried out with the intimidation and draconian manipulation of the Fourth Amendment to rob people of their dignity, liberty, property, and lives. Writer-director Jeremy Saulnier clearly understands that laws, statutes, and systemic structures are built not for the oppressed, but so that the oppressors may work under the guise of civil order. And this is something he is clearly furious about.
So I was thinking, what if we just walk away?
Well, now you're starting to talk.
But then I was like, nah.
All of which wouldn't cut through with the same shivering rage if it wasn't for Aaron Pierre giving one of the absolute crowning acting achievements of 2024. Rebel Ridge reframes First Blood for a world where young American men are more likely to be murdered by a badge than a foreign war. A grounded but bonkers, uncomfortable but never self-serious psychological thriller, Sleep uses a husband's increasingly erratic sleepwalking as a means of unpacking postpartum marital and domestic anxiety. How can we know the person we fall in love with won't change overnight? What are the rational limits of in sickness and health? There's something quietly captivating about a horror movie that leaves room for light and levity, to the point where I wouldn't disagree with anyone considering this a tar-black comedy by the final act. This one's flown a little under the radar this year, so don't sleep on Sleep. I know, it was a dumb joke, but I had to do it. F*** you.
Are you here to kill us?
Negative. I am here to help with whatever task you—
It says no!
Motherhood, adoption, inferiority complexes, chosen families, and the fundamental ability we each possess to better ourselves and our community through small acts of kindness and rebellion. Now that's a heavy list of delicate themes, and yet they're all handled with heart-rending, made-me-cry 3 times sweetness that's essentially about a robot sitting their heavy ass down on a bird's nest by mistake.
You gotta die faster. Meningitis takes a while. What did you pick? Rabies. Spontaneous combustion. Nightshade salad. Sepsis. Hey! I picked sepsis!
None of you are doing it right. We talked about this. Dead things don't have to explain why they're dead.
Uplifting and joyously sentimental in all the right ways, thank you, The Wild Robot, for showing me that the world is a beautiful place and I am no longer afraid to fly. Dishonorable mentions.
I'm a little chatbot looking for a family to love me. That would make me feel happy.
So you feel?
I learned how to feel from my training, and I'm still learning.
When a film opens with 35 seconds of AI-generated animation and the nauseating realization that this is a Sony Pictures production, you know you're about to drink a big ol' mug of suck. Afraid takes the terrifying social, cultural, technical, and paradigm-shattering spectre of our imminent AI future and boils it down to, what if my operating system was clingy and kind of a jerk?
Don't tell mommy and daddy. They wouldn't understand.
Fair play though, this does have an AI construct called Alexa a bitch, and contains the most accurate representation of a skeevy high school dude pretending to be sensitive so he can get nudes that I've ever seen. So much for small blessings, I suppose. As for where Afraid sits amongst the surprisingly large number of evil smart house movies, Demon Seed this ain't. Christ, this isn't even as good as Tau. Remember Tau, anyone?
Friendship isn't ever one way. Imaginary friends thrive off of a child's creativity and imagination. It feeds that hunger.
Imagine a horror movie where you don't see anyone die, nothing scary happens, 90% takes place in broad daylight, and none of the creatures or threats are frightening if you're over the age of 2. Well, here's the entirely devoid of imagination Imaginary, another cheapo Blumhouse PG-13 fart that feels like a one-sentence pitch stretched out to feature length. The Imaginary Terror? A teddy bear that occasionally moves its head a little bit? What about the hellish land of imaginary friends that is supposed to be made of infinite possibilities, untethered from the limits of reality? Yeah, it's just a soundstage corridor full of doors with tufts of cotton stapled to the ceiling to represent clouds. Heh. Imaginary has absolutely no creativity, and there's no reason for you to watch it.
I'll be asking you a few questions today, Arthur, okay? Maybe you don't remember some things? Or you're confused about what you did?
Seemingly made entirely out of deleted scenes, and as an unnecessary sequel to a plagiarized mess, Joker Folie à Deux is the navel-gazing embodiment of failing upwards. All filler and no killer, roughly 75 minutes of this circle jerk are unapologetic padding where people sit and recount the cliff notes of Joker. Then come the never-ending shots of Arthur Fleck bumming, lighting, and then smoking cigarettes. Yay, this is cinema.
Thanks, pal.
Even the limp jukebox interjections are choreographed and shot with all the kinetic curiosity of a salted slug, and to call this a musical is to call a wheelchair skidding on dog turds a car chase.
The Joker!
Joker Fall Out Boy album is a $200 million showreel in which Todd Phillips breaks his back trying to chug down his own loads.
Do you mind taking your top off so we can see your breasts? Yeah, sure.
With Maxine, Ty West has managed to take a sex-positive slasher gem in X and milk every drop of my goodwill straight down the gutter with this faux film grain afterbirth of bad ideas, mistaking references for world building and cribbing iconography for inspiration without actually doing anything with it.
It's quite the reminder. People can protest all they like, but if they'd look in the mirror, they'd realise we all have demons staring back at us.
The whole thing's an unironically awful scrapbook of platitudes spouted with a tone halfway between cornball and smug self-satisfaction, where Mia Goth Yelp drawls dreadful dialogue to caricatures of queer, black, and sex worker archetypes. More fatally though, the whole thing is an empty thrift store suit masquerading as something crucial without once checking its pockets for something novel or nasty. When the cleverest idea you have is to put 3 X's in the name Maxine, you might want to check those horror auteur aspirations. Night Swim's elevator pitch of what if your below ground pool was nasty is so silly but never self-aware that it should have been a campy cult classic in waiting. Alas, it's too bloodless and chlorinated in its humdrum non-horror to work on any level. A sort of mashup between Cocoon and Christine, nobody here ever reconciles the twisted machinations of this spooky swimming hole with the plain as day straightforward solution of fill it in with concrete and just don't go in it. As a result, the otherwise able cast spends the duration treading water between jump scares and contrived reason after contrived reason for people to find their way into this murder puddle. Save yourself an hour and a half and listen to Night Swimming by R.E.M. instead.
I made myself clear.
Yes, very clear.
Now I wish you a Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna go.
A Rise of the Guardians ripoff couched in the stink of Olympus Has Fallen, Red One is more nakedly cynical than a wink from Elon Musk. Brace yourself for a movie made for 6-year-olds that's weirdly full of swearing.
Come on! I know this is killing you. You have to trust me. Dismembering this shitbag isn't gonna help.
Stacked with anti-consumerist platitudes but caked in product placement, and preaching the importance of tactile human connections with the hideous aesthetic sensibility of a green screen belch. Chris Evans is doing his damn best to make lemonade from this rotten fruit, and there's a fun Krampus segment that made me wonder what this could have been if Guillermo del Toro took the reins. But the overriding thought I had this entire joyless time was, ho ho, how did this cost $250 million to shoot?
You and I are gonna have a long chat. Then we'll see if you live.
Rogue Elements feels like a Zucker Brothers parody of every possible jingoistic military cliche you can imagine, only there is not one intentionally funny thing here.
Better hope this isn't a trap. Because if those assholes don't kill you, I will. The only people dying today are those f***s.
Written and produced by a cinematically illiterate culture war opportunist who makes his chauvinistic living by purposefully ignoring the hundreds of great features released each year so they can cultivate an us versus them mentality amongst their audience. While this lacks his pandering alt-right dog whistles, it makes up for it by being a shockingly derivative, terribly written fan film of a D- Tom Clancy book report.
I've seen many men piss their pants in moments like this. And I remember one time a man who actually shit himself, believe it or not.
Limp, gut shot, and more wooden than a grown man who stole his entire shtick from Mr. Plinkett but didn't get the joke. If you want someone LARPing as a screenwriter in between his sellout Piers Morgan, Russell Brand, and Ben Shapiro bootlicking, Rogue Elements is a self-owning example of what happens when the Andrew Tate of media criticism wants to play pretend and get his fan base to pay for it.
There's a lot of ways to do readings, but astrology and tarot are intimately connected. If you use them together, they're a really powerful combination for forecasting.
Tarot's an odd duck, in that it doesn't have the discipline to follow its own premise. So the first 45 minutes consists of teens dying in ironic accidents based on their astrological information and ordained by a stack of tarot cards. But then the entire second half just kinda shrugs and says, we're just gonna have spooky ghosts kill people off screen with saws and swords. The po-faced way tarot demands the audience take astrology seriously never once gels with moments where characters sit straight-faced and say things like, I tried to use tarot cards to save my mom from terminal cancer, or I broke up with my boyfriend because he was a Leo. Tarot is as basic and interminable as being cornered at a party by someone who really wants you to compliment their rose quartz necklace. Jessica Alba begins this diet water of an action thriller as a willing participant in a war crime before returning home because a cave killed her father as he carried out his hobby of hanging out in a cave. If I could muster the will to write or remember anything more about this barren ditch of creative drought, It would only be to list how Trigger Warning somehow became more stupid and less likeable the longer it went along. So terribly scripted that it borders on an absurdist experiment, The Watchers is a maddening sham made of potentially intriguing ingredients. Dakota Fanning eats up runtime by expositing out loud and to herself, for no other reason than Shyamalan couldn't figure out how to cram the information in elsewhere.
It's just something I do sometimes. I think someone lives nearby. My mom died 15 years ago today.
Lore and internal logic are established and ignored in a continuous cycle of cause without effect, and each eventual twist seems to be in competition for narrative-breaking plot hole of the year. The Watchers is little more than a reminder that when a Shyamalan sucks, it really, really blows. Those were our honourable and dishonourable mentions of 2024, and we've still got our 10 best and 10 worst to look forward to, so check back in with us next time for entries 10 through 6 of our favourite films of the year. Shout out to our Patreon producers Jennifer C, Claire MD, Becky O, Kay Krause, Jennifer Fetish, Reed Stoven, Flayman, CC Sings, and Nicholas Slayer Revere, and a million enthusiastic fist bumps for all these amazing folks who support the channel over at Patreon. Why not let us know your favourite and least favourite films of the year down in the comments, along with whether or not you agree or disagree with our honourable and dishonourable mentions. As always, the best way to help us out is to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment down below, and if you're in a position to do so, consider checking out our Patreon at the link in the description below. As always, thank you for watching. Until next time, this is In Frame Out.